Welcome back to the Funny Thing Is podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Birch, where every episode I bring you someone who shares a life-changing event, the medicine they took to get better, and the funniest lesson they learned along the way. Today, we have a very special guest for you. I just watched her one-woman show. It's amazing. She's an award-winning TV writer, filmmaker, and comedian, Roche Jeffrey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to have you here. We met through our mutual friend, Jen Sturger, who's amazing, and she said that you had a one-woman show. Would you like to tell us about it?
Yeah, it's called The Troll, and it's a hybrid of stand-up and storytelling, and it kind of chronicles this experience I had being trolled last year and how it forced me to unpack a lot of my issues around just like self-worth and trolling, right? Which has become a huge part of our culture, unfortunately.
Yeah. Can I share some of the stats that you give? Okay, so this fascinated me. You said 40% of the internet experienced trolling. I thought that was low.
I think
just
that's
because I think,
low.
but we're also in the industry and we also put ourselves out there. So maybe it would feel, I'm like, I get trolled every day. So I'm like, when you say 40%, I'm like, what are you, like, isn't it everybody? And it's like, no, I'm sure there's people out there who don't get it, 100%. Right? 60% of the people, apparently. And then you said 70% are women. Mm-hmm. Does not surprise me.
Yeah.
And then Black women are trolled the most and 84% more likely to be trolled than white women.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. And it makes sense to me. It was actually, I was not going to lie, when I looked this up, this is from the Pew Research Center, that those stats, when I looked it up, I was actually surprised.
Yeah.
I didn't really, because Black women are such a small part of our population.
Right.
But yeah.
I will say this. I just started watching this one creator. I should have gone back and gotten her name. She's this gorgeous Black woman, tall, thin, married to a white guy, and has a brand new baby, may have more than one kid. Mm-hmm. And it is just a video that I saw yesterday. She's dancing in the kitchen. He's at the stove cooking. And like the tag on top says something like, get you a man who can cook so you can just eat in the kitchen all day. Mm-hmm. And she's got the baby Bjorn, the baby's attached to her. And she is fucking gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And the house is beautiful. And she like acts like she's pinching his butt. And it's the sweetest video. Mm-hmm. And holy shit, the comment section.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, racist at a minimum, mm-hmm. but then other Black men commenting on it and other Black women commenting and then other white men, like everybody. I was like, this is a study in fucking troll. And I'm like, this is the sweetest message. I don't know how you could look at this any other way.
Yeah.
And they're just like one of them even made fun of her stove. And I'm like, that's a $15,000 stove. And they're like, he's not cooking the right way. I mean, just like, trolling is out of control, dude.
It is an epidemic.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's social media is what's really, I mean, we've been trolled in real life, right? For years, right. Forever.
Of course.
But social media has made it worse. I think the accessibility to other people's lives, and then it's the ease with which you can just like destroy someone's day.
Yeah. The hiding behind the keyboard is like what you would say. I'm trying to think, what I've had a few where like, I'll get into it. Usually I just ignore it. My husband's very good about being like, don't read that. Why are you reading that? Mm-hmm. Why are you engaging in that? And, keep in mind, he also doesn't have social media because I'm like, deep down, he knows he couldn't handle it. And so when I do it and it's like, oh, it's part of my platform. It's a way to make money. It's a way to get my shows posted or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we kind of have to be out there. We don't have to, but you kind of have to.
Yeah.
And so when you're out there, you do make yourself a target. And I spoke to one of Sylvia Sage, who was on our show. And I go, what do you do when you get the negative comments? And she goes, 25 days a month, I let it roll off my back. 5 days a month when I'm on my period, I let all hell unleash on these assholes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but then you get into it and then there's no good ending. You just talk yourself for 3 days getting like red-faced.
Yeah. And it's funny because, as somebody who works in the industry, I'm used to criticism and negative feedback, but these trolls really can get into your head. It's like they can really identify the issues or your triggers.
Yeah.
Even with that video you just described, it's like they can figure out how to really put a knife in whatever wounds you already have.
It's crazy.
And it can get to you and you're like, whoa, why am I so affected by a comment?
Right.
Right? Like, why is this bothering me so much? Right.
Do you want to tell the arc of the show, or or you could share a life-changing event, but I figured it would have to do with this.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start from the beginning. So I performed stand-up in Culver City at this, pretty large venue. And they had a huge social media following. And they were like, hey, can we post your set online? And at that point, I hadn't really performed stand-up that much. And I said, sure. And they posted it and I was bracing myself, kind of excited because I was stupid. Like expecting it to be like, okay, great.
Right.
I'm finally posting my stand-up, which was kind of scary to me.
Of course.
But I was like, okay. And it was just the post was inundated with hundreds of just like racist, I was called the N-word, fat phobic comments, all sorts of just dozens upon dozens of these comments. And it kind of shook me. I think if I had prepared myself, if I had gone into it being like, just expecting it to be negative, I think I probably would have been less affected.
Right.
But because I anticipated it being a positive experience, I didn't, wasn't prepared. And so it really just like, it was devastating. Mm-hmm. Like reading all these really mean comments was very hurtful. And so I contemplated like not doing stand-up because I had just started.
Right.
And so there was a part of me that was like, well, this is a sign that I shouldn't do this, like,
I know. That's how fast we can get there.
You're like going from like, I'm Wanda Sykes to like, I should never do stand up again. Right. You can do it in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And so, I think for me, I had some great friends who kind of sat me down and were like, look, in a weird way, this is a good thing. Because I think people troll you because of 2 things. I think their own misery, right?
For sure.
But also they see something in you that I think they recognize is great. Like that woman you were talking about with the family and that video. It's like those people probably saw that she was happy.
Yeah.
And she was living
her best life.
And they want to, somehow undermine that or disrupt that. And I think in my case with the stand-up, I was saying some real stuff about the world and people didn't like it. Mm-hmm. But if I wasn't a voice that was worthy of attention or potentially worthy of attention, do I think they would have trolled me as hard as they did? No.
Right.
I think it's like you troll people who you fear in a lot of ways, right? And so I think that made me sit down and go, okay, it took me a while to get back to a place where like, I have something, I have a voice,
right? I
have something that people are resonating with. But then as I was unpacking that, I realized that my troll, like I've somebody who's worked in the Hollywood for a while, I've encountered a lot of trolls in my career, old bosses, colleagues. And I started to kind of unravel this thread of trolls, this through line of trolls throughout my life, whether it was people in the entertainment industry. And then ultimately the biggest troll was my mom. Like if I were being honest.
Oh, that part of your show.
It's like realizing that a lot of these people remind me of my mom, and they were saying the things that my mom has said to me in my life. And then as I get deeper and deeper, and as I was exploring and writing the show, it became clear that, I was my ultimate troll, right? Like the reason why I'm so upset about the things these people said was because there's a part of me that believes it or has said it to myself,
When you said that in the show, I was like, my husband and I were talking, I was like, what's the thing that, he goes, what's the comment that pisses you off the most that you get? And I go, when they make fun of my eyebrows. Because if I ever post anything without full makeup on, because I overplucked in the 90s, thanks to Gwen Stefani and Christina Aguilera, and they say it's going to grow back. It never grows back. And so I overplucked and they're just, and I'm Italian. You'd think I'd have caterpillars, nothing. So anytime I post, there's always like 5 dudes. So, and a lot of women too, that are like, what happened to her eyebrows? What's the rest? And I don't know why but it's because that's my self-talk. So that's what my husband said. He goes, it's like what she's saying. it's the thing that bothers you the most, that's why it hurts the most. If they said something about your thumbnails,
Yes.
you'd be like, oh, I don't know.
Or something you know is not even remotely true. I'm not bothered by stuff like
At
that.
all. At all.
If somebody was like, you're an ugly Italian, I'd be like, what?
What?
One, I'm
Next.
not ugly. Two, I'm not an Italian.
Next.
You know what I mean? But
Move
it's
on.
like,
yeah.
when it's something that feels real, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's like, that is the thing that I really wanted to work through and process through the show.
Right.
And funny enough, like the show is very specific, but I found a lot of people really relate to it, which makes me feel sad that a lot of people have had this experience. Yeah. But like, I think a lot of us are really struggling with that negative self-talk. And we have two choices, right? We either become, empaths and relate to other people and try to soothe other people's anxieties, or you turn that insecurity, that sense of self-hatred onto other people.
Right.
And that's kind of what I think is happening in our culture right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think how you said, when you said there's two things that, or why people troll. Oh, that was the other thing. 15% admit to being trolls. I was surprised it was 15%. I thought it would be like 2.
There's probably way more than that, but those are the people who are willing to say that they troll people. I have friends who troll people online, and admit to it, but do it in a funny way. Yeah. Right? Like I have a friend who literally trolls one of our other friends all the time.
Right.
But he's doing it for funsies. But then I wonder, is he?
Is he? And is it getting to the other person?
Yeah.
But when you said it's the two things, I've always thought about this. Somebody told me this once, that if somebody is successful and happy, they'll never write a negative comment. Because you can be successful and be a miserable piece of shit, and then you might write comments. Or you could be really happy but not successful. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so like, anybody that's writing that stuff is not a well-rounded, things are going my way type of person.
You're not a happy person.
No.
100%.
That's the only way to get, because I can't, anytime that I've had a big judgment on somebody, which I realized anytime I'm judgmental, I need to replace it with curiosity.
Got it.
That erases all judgment, and then you're coming to the table to be like absolutely curious.
I love that.
And so if I'm judgmental of somebody, I'm in a bad place. It's like an immediate reflection of like, okay, Mitch, just what's going on? And also, were you about to type that? No, I don't think I've ever typed anything like that, unless it's like, somebody's like, hey, does everybody hate pedophiles? And I'm like, yeah, I hate pedophiles. Other than that, if it's anything like bipartisan, I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's just weird.
No, I hear that completely. And I think like, that is a lesson I'm taking with me because I've dealt with my own issues with envy or jealousy.
For sure.
And I think what you're saying resonates with me as well, because I do think a lot of trolls troll from a place of envy and jealousy, as I was saying earlier.
Right.
And the question is like, instead of lashing out, maybe we should ask ourselves some questions like, why am I so bothered by this person or this expression of this person's joy or whatever? I think that is a really good, like, cognitive behavioral therapy move.
1,000%.
To ask ourselves, like, why am I so bothered by this?
Okay, so I have a question. So you do talk about your mom.
Yeah.
Has she seen it?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do you guys talk?
We don't really talk. And I honestly, like, that's the part. I was talking to my aunt, my mom's sister, and she was like, girl, this is a lot. And I really debated whether or not I wanted to go there with it, but I couldn't tell the truth. I couldn't tell the truth without talking about that relationship. And so I had to go there.
Yeah, there's a writing, especially as a writer and stuff. There's a writing quote that is my favorite quote of all time. I think I just said it on the last podcast, where it's, if somebody wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better. And like if you're writing and you're creating and you're doing all that stuff, it's your story.
It's 100%. I mean, if we had a relationship, I might feel differently, but we don't really have much of a relationship. And so for me, and also like, I think as we get older, we realize all of our problems come from our childhood and our parents, right? Like like if you were to be honest, like almost,
you whittle it down to that. You can whittle it down to your first 12 years. Easy.
Almost. Yeah. I have never encountered a problem, and I have a lot of them. I've never encountered a single problem that I have that I can't go back to a moment in childhood or a moment with my parents. And that's not to say that my parents are awful, horrible people.
Right.
It's just that like, you know, so much of how it's like those first 12 years, those formative years, that defines who we are for the rest of our
And
lives
how we
for a
view
lot
the
of
world.
people.
Yes.
Yeah.
How we view the world, and then how we think people treat us. Yeah.
100%. And so, you know, you can't speak the truth without sometimes it's uncomfortable. It's
Right.
not pretty.
Dude, one of the funniest lines was your Candace Owens line. I screamed. I laughed so hard because you were talking about Black Republicans, and like that was, and the timing of it was great because that was a little bit before, and then you said her ideal daughter would be
Yeah.
Candace Owens, and I lost it. It was so great. I hate to be that person that keeps quoting your show,
No.
but I do have one more quote that I'm gonna do,
Yeah.
and then I'll be done. It was when it was getting a bit emotional, and it had to do with your girlfriend Ebony.
Yeah.
And you said, when it came to like experiencing trolling, you were like, and she was defending you. I think that's kind of what it was. You said, I was uncomfortable because no one had really protected me from abuse before. And I was like, fuck. Because that's what it feels like online. It feels just like a re-abuse.
Yeah.
And like nobody's coming to save you again. And
100%.
again, going back to your childhood.
Yeah.
It's like, damn.
Feeling unprotected, I think it is abuse.
Yeah.
And I think people act like, you know, we're becoming softer as people. Like, and when we say things like, you know, online trolling, it's bullying.
Right.
Right? It is abuse. And when you experience that at a mass level, and it's all these random anonymous people.
Oh, bots.
All-
or like zero
bots.
followers, zero posts.
It's so you feel like kind of inundated with it. And there's also kind of, when somebody trolls you and you know who they are, it's a little bit different because you kind of have a frame of reference, you know, have context.
Right.
When it's just like hundreds of people online, you know, it feels very overwhelming. And so to have that happen, and then to have somebody defend me, try to protect me. And historically, I realized like, this is so much, I have so much therapy, but
yeah,
in all of my relationships, growing up and to adulthood and in the industry, no one really protected me. Like whenever I've encountered abuse, it's just like, this is the way it is.
Right. This is how the industry goes. Yeah.
And it's like, move on, buck up. Like, and that is not, one, helpful. But two, it doesn't allow you to heal, right? Because you're just told to move on. So to have somebody be like, no,
yeah,
I'm going to protect you.
Also in an industry where you're wanting to be creative and to share your voice and to do that, now you're being told in another capacity to shut up. And you're like, what's the balance here, dude?
100%. And I think that's what's so interesting as women who have platforms or who want to share ideas, you're always running into that, right? And that is so frustrating to deal with, like this idea that, you know, as a woman, and as I said, 84% more likely Black women to be trolled.
Right.
It's like, we don't want to hear you.
Right. Yeah.
Like a lot of the comments.
Don't share your stuff.
A lot of the comments were like literally like, you're just another fat Black woman who's like unfunny. Stop talking. Right. It was literally like, we don't want to hear from you. And so, yeah, it's really disturbing to think that there are people who actually think like that
and can like just have the balls to say shit
and
like
say it like, whoa.
And like, it's not like it's like how you said, where people think that we're in a softer culture and stuff. It's like, well, there's teenagers killing themselves because they're being trolled online.
100%.
If I found out my daughter, I would lose my mind. First of all, she's not allowed to have social media until she's 18. When she's an adult, she can figure it out.
Yeah.
But absolutely no. And if you find out that your kid's doing that, how you don't shake the shit out of them. I don't understand. Like some of these parents are like, well, they're just words. And I'm like, I swear.
Well, those parents are bullies too.
They're bullies too. And I'm like, I'm 42 and I'm sensitive to it. And only because of that is that 18-year-old rule in place for my kid. Because I'm like, I know I have a full bad day. You don't have your frontal lobe done yet. So like, no.
There's a documentary series right now on FX. I think it's called Social Studies.
Ooh, okay.
That is fascinating. And it follows a diverse group of kids in high school in LA.
Okay.
And it's about their relationship to social media.
Ooh, okay.
And it's very dark. It's I started watching it the other night and I was like, this is a horror film. It was literally like kids who, they're the first generation that literally was born with, since the moment they entered the world
terrifying.
with social media.
Terrifying.
And so to see how much it's shaped their perception of themselves and the world, it's really dark. I'm luckily in a interesting generation because I think I was in college when Facebook,
right,
and a little bit of high school, but like mostly college, where Facebook, MySpace took over.
Right.
So I know what it's like to kind of grow up in a world where we didn't really have the same opportunities to connect with each other.
Right.
And so my bullying that I faced growing up was like face to face, which was the one, that's the bullying I like.
Right.
Okay. I like a face to face.
Say it to my face.
In my face. Let's go. But the bullying online, I think it does something to us psychologically, because again, it makes you feel like, you know, it's pervasive. It makes you feel like this is the whole world, right? 10 voices online that are from all different parts of the country saying something makes it feel like it's the whole earth that feels it, right?
It's also like getting punched in the face and then they run away and you can't even like, wait, hold on, wait. And then even if you do comment, sometimes they never comment back and you're like, it's so cyclical.
It is. And then when you look them up again, they don't have any followers. So you're like, is this real? Was this a bot? What's happening?
I have a troll who their username is always like XXYZZ and then a bunch of numbers. And then I blocked them. And then they came back with ZZYXXQ. And like they all kind of like mirror all the usernames. And I think he's on she, I'm not really sure, is on their fourth one. And the last page that they made, they started just posting memes and then putting my name in it. But like some of them weren't even insulting. Like it would be a cat drinking milk and it would be like, instead of meow, meow, it would be meow, Nicole. And I'm like, what am I even looking at? And like, oh, this person might not even be mentally well. Like there might be just something.
Well, I mean, it's so funny that you say that.
We
because,
both go,
well, I mean, I was talking about this on Threads the last night, and in the other version I did of the troll, I did it right before the election, and I added some things to it. And one of the things I talk about is that what we're not saying is that trolling is a function of narcissism and sociopathy, right?
Yeah.
So these people are sociopaths. A lot of them are narcissists. And so this is mental. It's a mental illness. Look, I have my own mental illness. So it's not to say that mentally ill people are the only ones who troll, but there is something to be said about like the relationship to
Bless you.
Pardon me. Woo. There's something to be said about the relationship to mental like illness and narcissistic personality disorder, people who have some of these like personality issues, and trolling.
Right.
And the thing is that this is a place that they love to live in because they can do it in the shadows.
Yeah.
Or these are the people, you may see them at work and think that they're a nice person and whatever. And then secretly they're
trolling you online,
trolling people, right? So it's a great way for them to get that outlet because they know it's not socially acceptable to do it in public. So it's kind of dark.
I know you were also talking about writing something. So it's so funny because I wanted to write a horror comedy about being like the sleuth, where you show up at their house, where it's kind of like all CIA operatives, and you got the hacker who's like, this is their address. Then you've got the B team who like goes in and just kills them. And it's like a bloodbath. And I'm like, I don't really know what the through line is. I'm still working that. I'm just to the point where I'm like, let's find them. Let's expose them. Cause it's just.
That's literally what I'm adapting this into a TV show. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about is like, it's because it's not just about the psychological warfare that's going on online. It's actually affecting our culture. Yes. It's affecting our politics. It's the underbelly of the internet and how it's being used and manipulated to really alter people's brains and how we think about other people, how we think about certain issues. It's going to be studied for years because it has far-reaching implications.
Yeah. And then it's again with like law enforcement.
Yeah.
With technology moving at 10 times the rate, law enforcement's like, we can't keep up.
They can't keep up.
So if people are, it's the girl who was with her boyfriend over the phone, and she encouraged him to kill himself. And then he did. And you're like, okay, so I don't even know if she was found guilty or whatever.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, so what do we accuse these? What legislation do we need to pass to make sure that, and I think you're right, it's going to be studied for years. And like 10 years from now, there's going to be so many more laws.
Yes. They're going to have to do something. Yeah. Right? Because at a certain point, the internet has to be reined in, or we're going to lose our culture. Right? Even kids being online, I think it's going to have to be, eventually they're going to make that illegal for kids to have social media accounts.
I think they're already talking about it, because like in other countries, like they can't have a smartphone until they're a certain age. What would you say is your medicine that has helped you? I
think there are two things. I think doing a lot of self-work.
Right. What's that look like?
For me, it's been like, I do this thing called To Be Magnetic, plug for them. Ooh. But it's essentially a manifestation practice that requires that you kind of go back in time and you meditate on your triggers. Okay. Because the idea is that you can't manifest the things that you want in life until you heal.
And it's called what?
To Be Magnetic.
To Be Magnetic.
And it's essentially saying like, your ability to manifest is tied to your self-worth.
Yeah.
So you kind of go back and you meditate on triggers and moments in your life that taught you to see yourself in a certain way. And you go back and you essentially reparent yourself, right?
Right.
And you heal those traumas so that you can manifest the things you want. And through that process, that was kind of my gateway into a lot of healing, in addition to like traditional therapy. Right. And just like really understanding that, essentially a lot of my issues again are tied to my past, and like how do I heal that? Then the other thing is creativity. I mean, making this show was very healing for me, because I think I talked about this in the show. I've hidden a lot of myself in Hollywood, in life. I don't show up fully as myself.
Right.
And so by showing up as myself, it's been healing. And sharing my talent has been healing, and recognizing I think all of us have stories that are worthy of being told.
Right.
And so that has been really, really helpful to me. That has been the medicine, is this show, honestly, and seeing how people connect to it.
It felt cathartic. And the relatability can't be understated. Like, it's, at least for me, but even like my husband, who's not on socials, he was like into it. And he was like, that's how I feel at work sometimes. Like when there's just people that do like the undercutting comments and say stuff and behind your back. And you're like, what is happening? Like, we're adults, dude. And so if it's, festering into the workplace for somebody who's not even on social media, I think you're right. Like, it is a societal thing.
We have a huge, and my friend was saying yesterday, like corporate culture is breeding this.
Yeah.
Corporate culture rewards people stabbing people in the back and like being nefarious and evil. Like it's pervasive.
Okay. So what, this is going to be weird, but what's the funniest lesson that you learned?
Ooh, I mean, I say this in the show, but like some of the comments were funny to me.
That was my favorite, because you're like what the one you said, like the troll I hated the most was the one that made me laugh. Or something.
Yeah, I was like, that was actually funny. Like, that's the thing, is like I don't take myself too super seriously, right? And so I don't mind a little biting joke here or there. So like, a couple of them, I was like, this is rude, but that's hilarious and creative, right? So I think that was one of the lessons. I think also for me, like, I think you think you've grown, right? Sometimes you think you've evolved and you're like a grown woman. But when I got these messages, I was like crying like a baby. And I was like, oh, girl, we're still...
we're going through it. We gotta dig through some stuff.
Yeah. And so I think that was funny to me to realize that, like, oh, you're not all the way there. Like, you think you're an adult, but then sometimes you're like, oh no, I'm emotionally a toddler.
Still processing it. Still processing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's it's so funny because there was some video of this guy, and he's like a muscle head, and he's like, his neck's really thick, and he goes, women don't like dad bods. And then I did a stitch with it where my husband, who has a dad bod, I was like, nah, actually it's great. I don't know what you're talking about. Like something like that. The comments were all like women going, we love dad bods. I don't know what you're talking about. And then there were men going, that's a lie. You're lying to yourselves. And And then this one guy gets on there and it ends up having like 600 comments just with this one guy back and forth with people. And 9 of them hilarious things that he said. I go, drop dead funny. And I go, you know what? If you would use the amount of energy you use to be funny and to just being a nice guy. And now he follows me. He likes all my, he likes everything, comments lovely things. But it took me being like, dude, like, you're really funny. If you could maybe like not be an asshole.
Harness it.
And then now he's like, no, it's kind of like when Sarah Silverman, right? Like what that one troll, I don't know what he said to her, but she's like, do you need help? And it turned out he was having a bad day and needed therapy. And so she found him a therapist. I don't know if I'm always as gracious as like Sarah Silverman in those instances, but I'd like to think that.
I mean, it's true. Like, everybody who trolls is not, as I stated earlier, it's like they're not all narcissists. They're not all sociopaths.
Right.
A lot of them are. Some of them are just people who are going through it, and they take pleasure in like making other people feel as badly as they do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to distinguish between. Like, it's like, I don't know which one is which.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
How can people find the show? What's going on with the show? You're touring it right now?
Well, so my plan is to take it to New York and to Fringe this. Well, this is airing in January, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So Fringe this spring, and New York, and then eventually I want to take it to Edinburgh if I can this summer.
I think it would be perfect spot for it.
Yeah.
That's a perfect spot for it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, hopefully we'll go on tour and then eventually make it the TV show. And you can follow me on Instagram at Roche Jeffrey, ROCHEE JEFFREY.
And what's the website that you sent me?
And the website for the troll is the trollshow.com.
It's great. You guys have to check it out. Thank you so much for being. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on.
Appreciate it. Yes, it's so great.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much. You guys can follow us at The Funny Thing Is Podcast or at Nicole Birch Comedy or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Bye-bye.